Yo, what's going on, y'all? It's Cone back here again tonight with another episode of After the Buzzer, the show where I recap the NBA games from the night. This is the first time I've done one of these videos in a little bit, but of course, with the playoffs now here and the first day in the books, you know I had to bring it back, and it was an amazing first day of the playoffs. The first game wasn't great. Sixers versus Nets, Hawks versus Celtics was terrible in that series as a whole. It's probably not going to last very long, and I'll get to those games later, as well as Cavs and Knicks, which was pretty good. But the main thing I want to cover in this video is Kings versus Warriors, because this is a series that I've long had circled on my calendar. I said this in my series preview video, that this is one I wanted to see because I think it could make for some incredible hoops, and it did exactly that. This first game is one of the best playoff games that I have ever seen, especially as of late. It had all the feelings that I'm looking for in a playoff game. There were big star performances, there were comebacks, massive shots, back and forth momentum switching either way, an amazing atmosphere. Kings fans really showed out for their first playoff game in 16 years. It truly had the feel of like an NBA Finals game, despite being the first game of a first round series. It was amazing, and if you ask anybody, this was the best game of the night, but I think we need to go in particular what made this game so amazing and what some of my biggest takeaways were from game one of Warriors versus Kings. Now, out of the gate, things were a bit slow for Sacramento. Their offense didn't seem to quite have its rhythm yet, which is understandable for a young team without much playoff experience. It was also not helped by the fact that the Warriors played some amazing defense in the first half. Andrew Wiggins, of course, made his return to the lineup in this game. He came off the bench, but he played some amazing minutes, especially defensively, and in the first half offensively, he was really good. Now he slowed down a bit in the second half, especially late in the game, but overall this was a really solid bounce back game from Andrew Wiggins, who really didn't seem to miss much of a step, especially on that defensive end. And with the combined efforts of him and Gary Payton on the wings, they were wreaking havoc, as well as Draymond Green down low. He had an amazing game, both playmaking wise and defensively. He's never going to be much of a scorer, but in those other facets of the game, Draymond was dominant. Kevon Looney was also really good. They prevented basically anybody from scoring with a clean look in the paint. If you were going to get downhill and finish around the rim, you were going to have to fight through 8 different guys to get there, and they were going to make it really hard once you got anywhere close to the rim. This was particularly an issue for Domantas Sabonis, who had a really rough game tonight. He just could not score. He had his least efficient game of the entire season. Now, his rebounding was huge, especially late in this game, but ultimately, it was just not a good night for Sabonis. He couldn't really back down Draymond Green or Kevon Looney effectively. He settled for a lot of jumpers, which they were giving him all the room in the world to shoot those jump shots, which he's going to have to knock down and make the Warriors respect him a little bit to help open things up for the rest of the team. But I don't think Sabonis will be this bad again in this series. It kind of seemed like a bit of jitters, and I think the Kings will do a better job of scheming around the defense that the Warriors threw at him. But in this first matchup, they did a great job of not just slowing Sabonis down, but basically removing him from the game entirely on the offensive end. And defensively, they also target him. His rim protection is an issue for this team. The Kings aren't known for their defense. They're typically a high-powered offense, but at the same time, even when Sabonis wasn't looking to score, he was just trying to do his usual two-man actions, the dribble handoffs. The wings did a great job of denying the ball from the guy that tried to curl around the screen. If they did curl around the screen and try to shoot, someone was immediately there to hedge it. The Warriors just played amazing defense, particularly in this first half, and for the most of the game, they did a good job. But by the second half, the Kings' offense started to kind of flow a little bit. In particular, Trey Lyles came up big in the third quarter, knocking down a bunch of threes, securing some offensive boards, as the Kings started to slowly come back and eventually took a lead into the fourth quarter, where all hell broke loose. This is really where the game went from, wow, this is really fun, to one that everybody is going to remember for a really long time. For Golden State, Steph Curry went completely ballistic. He could not miss in this fourth quarter. He was knocking down the craziest, most contested threes, which is what Steph Curry always does. But even some of these felt absurd for Steph Curry himself. There was one in particular in the corner that hopefully I have a clip of here, where it was completely smothered. Like, the Kings were playing good defense on him basically the entire game. I was actually decently impressed with their defense on Steph Curry, but he would just hit the most, off-balance sidestep threes, fading out of bounds, super contested. He would get to the rim and finish through some absurd contact. They just couldn't do anything against Steph Curry. They were playing good defense, But to be honest, sometimes you just kind of have to hope Steph misses. Even if you play the best defense in the world, he's going to knock down some of these shots. It's what we've seen him do for years at this point, and he did it tonight in this game. However, they did a good job on most everybody else. Andrew Wiggins really struggled to score from three. Klay Thompson had a pretty inefficient game as well. Jordan Poole was 4 of 10 from the field. The Kings defense, for the most part, did a good job. Both Steph Curry, there was just nothing they could do except for out-duel him. And this is where De'Aaron Fox and Malik Monk come into play, because in the fourth quarter, they scored almost all of the Kings' points. In fact, I think it was all of them but 7 points in that fourth quarter. The two of them completely dominated. Now, Malik Monk was aggressive the entire game. He was going at the defenders, even though they were sending a million bodies in the paint. He was just being aggressive, and that led to him getting to the free throw line 14 times, and he knocked down all 14 of his free throw attempts, tying, I believe, the record for most free throw attempts made in a playoff debut without missing a single one. So big performance from him, and this aggression, this ability to get to the free throw line led to him scoring 32 points, a massive performance from him in, like I said, his playoff debut. And then, of course, there's De'Aaron Fox, who is almost assuredly going to win the Clutch Player of the Year award. If it goes to anybody else, it's a massive mistake. And he did his usual thing in the fourth quarter today, scoring a majority of the Kings' points in this period. And it was everything from floaters to pull-up jumpers to threes, attacking the basket, making plays for others. De'Aaron Fox, the second you get to the fourth quarter, it's like he flips a switch. Most of the game, he's good, but the second you get into those final 12 minutes, there are very few players that can score and produce like De'Aaron Fox does. He has been one of the most impressive clutch players this season that I have seen in quite some time, and it's every single game. Like, it's not once in a while or, every few games. Every single game where it's a close matchup in the fourth quarter, De'Aaron Fox knows, okay, it's my time to go get the ball, it's my time to perform, and it's like all of a sudden he just cannot miss regardless of the defensive pressure that you put on him. It was exactly the case again tonight, and he outdueled Steph Curry, one of the greatest point guards of all time. Some people would even say the greatest, one of the best players to ever play, still one of the best players in the league, who was absolutely on his A game in this fourth quarter. Yet De'Aaron Fox outdueled him en route to 38 points, tying for second most points ever in a player's playoff debut. And not only did Fox do this against Steph, but he did it against a Golden State Warriors team that was throwing amazing defenders at him left and right, a team that has won so many rings over the past few years. They've been there, they've done this before. This was his first playoff game, and yet he was able to completely counter anything that the Warriors threw at him. He has been a special player all year, and I hope people realize with this performance that he had just how good De'Aaron Fox is. He's going to be in an All-NBA team. He's going to win Clutch Player of the Year, and he deserves both of those things. He's one of the best guards in the league, period, and he showed exactly why tonight, as well as Malik Monk. He deserves a lot of credit too. In fact, let me read you all the scoring plays that the Kings had in the fourth quarter. This is credit of Worldwide Wob on Twitter. I'm sure most of you know him, but all the Kings' fourth quarter scoring plays, they got a Fox 3, a Monk 3, 2 Monk free throws, 2 Fox 2-pointers, a Monk 2-pointer, Barnes scored 2, Fox scored 3, Monk free throws, Fox hits a 3, Monk scores a couple free throws, Fox assists on a Sabonis bucket, Barnes hits a 3, Fox hits a couple free throws, and Monk hits a couple of free throws. It's basically all Malik Monk or De'Aaron Fox. The two of them were completely dominant, and of course, a bit of Harrison Barnes sprinkled in there as well. He had a really good game too, and it came down all the way to the wire. Steph and Fox are trading blows, Malik Monk in the mix as well. And at the end of the game, Steph Curry had a wide open 3, or not necessarily wide open, it was kind of like more of a floater from 3, but it was a good shot, especially for Steph Curry to tie this game and send it to overtime, which I can't lie, I was hoping for. I wanted to see more of this matchup. However, Steph ends up missing. The Kings make it out of this one. They get to light the beam and get their first playoff win in 16 years because of the play of De'Aaron Fox, Malik Monk. Davion Mitchell also played some great defense. Trey Lyles, Harrison Barnes. Sabonis was big on rebounds, even if he wasn't scoring great. The Kings get this massive win. This is a big one. Get the nerves out of the way, secure this first win, take advantage of having home court to begin the series. And if they can go out and go up 2-0 in the next game, it's going to be a massive statement, which I think the Kings already made in this game in particular. Like I said, a lot of people are picking the Warriors not just to win this series, but to completely decimate the Kings. Yet Sacramento was able to win this game when their offense was pretty dry in the first half, which is supposed to be their calling card. Domantas Sabonis didn't play great all game, but they still got the win. And I think that's a huge showing for Sacramento, showing that they can win in more than one way. They're pushing the pace, keeping up with the Golden State Warriors, who are frantically running up and down the court like they always do. The Kings played a great game. I think there's a lot to be encouraged by in this matchup. If they can get Sabonis playing up to his usual level, the Kings have a real shot to win this series, which I've been saying all this time. As for the Warriors, even though they lost this one, I think there's a lot of positives to take away. Like I said, Andrew Wiggins looked great, especially defensively. Same with GP2. Kevon Looney, Draymond, all of them were absolutely locking up, and I expect them to still play high-level defense. And if they can do that and slow the Kings' offense while also taking advantage of a weak defense on the other side, the Warriors still have a pretty good shot to end up winning this series. Also, Steph is amazing. He's going to continue to be that good. Klay Thompson, Jordan Poole struggled, but I expect them to probably bounce back. They usually don't stay down for long. So yeah, I think the Warriors have some things to be encouraged by, but ultimately the Kings do take an advantage here. Mike Brown deserves a lot of credit too. I love the way that he rotated players who he ended up using in certain situations. He stuck with his guns with Sabonis down the stretch, which came up big as he grabbed a bunch of big boards. Shout out to him. He's going to win Coach of the Year. He should probably win it unanimously. And I think he had a great showing in his first playoff game as the Kings head coach. Overall, I can't wait for more of this series. This is the one that I was looking most forward to coming into things, and I'm still looking most forward to it now. I'm really sad we have to wait a couple more days before we get to see game 2, but I expect that it's going to be amazing nonetheless. And hopefully we get 6 more games of this, because I don't want to see this matchup between these two high-powered offenses end anytime soon. Next, I want to go to Cavaliers versus Knicks, which is easily the second best game of this slate, and probably the biggest storyline of this matchup was the duel between Donovan Mitchell and Jalen Brunson, which especially carried in the second half. In the first half, Brunson got into some foul trouble, so he didn't play very much. He had 3 fouls pretty quickly, but ultimately in the second half, he was able to stay out of that foul trouble and completely dominated, finishing with 27 points, while Donovan Mitchell completely took over, dropping 38 points to go with 5 boards, 8 assists, and 3 steals. It's the typical Spida stuff that we see in the playoffs. He always rises to this occasion, and these two guys were trading buckets all the way up until the end. And in the final moments up 2, the Knicks had a chance to go ahead and put the dagger into Cleveland. Jalen Brunson got a pretty decent look at a step back 2, but he missed. And so Cleveland, gets the ball back, and they've got a chance to go ahead and tie this game or win it with a 3. Except for the fact that they can't secure the rebound. Julius Randle comes in. Evan Mobley doesn't really box him out. Randle secures the rebound, kicks it out to Quentin Grimes, who knocks on a couple of free throws, and with a few seconds left, up 4. The Knicks make it out of this one and steal game 1 on the road against Cleveland. It's a huge win for them. I said in my series preview for this matchup that the Knicks really needed to take an early game in Cleveland if they wanted to have a good chance of winning, which not only did they take an early game, they took the literal first game of the series. That's huge for this Knicks team. And a lot of it, like I said, was Jalen Brunson, also Julius Randle, who, while Brunson was in foul trouble, carried them early. Later on, his offense kind of disappeared, especially in the third quarter. I don't think he scored once in that period, and even in the fourth, I believe he only had 1 bucket. But even still, his effort was also huge on the offensive glass in particular. He was a monster. Like I said, he secured that final offensive board to seal this game, and that was really kind of what it came down to for Cleveland. They could not keep the Knicks off the offensive glass. This is something that I highlighted specifically in my series preview. I said that in their last matchup, the Knicks completely obliterated them on the offensive glass. Mitchell Robinson had, I think, more than the Cavaliers had as an entire team. And if they wanted to win this series, the Cavaliers, especially if they wanted to get out of it quickly, they had to limit the Knicks on the offensive glass. They didn't do that whatsoever. They gave up so many critical offensive boards, giving them second chance opportunities. And with a Knicks offense that is high power potential, you can't give them all these chances or you're going to just lose the game. They have to find some way to keep the Knicks off the offensive glass. Julius Randle had a few. Josh Hart, who was amazing, had 5. Mitchell Robinson had 5. They had multiple players with 2 or more. You can't let that happen. If you're going to let them continue getting there on the glass and now hustle you, you're going to lose the series, and you're going to let them continue to take games here in Cleveland where you desperately need to win because you're not a great road team. And I think part of the reason why the Knicks just continuously outwork them is because they were able to be more well-rested. This Knicks team didn't play a single player more than 33 minutes. They had 8 guys play over 20, which is very atypical for a Tom Thibodeau team. Typically, you see him play guys like 40, 43 minutes in these scenarios, but he didn't have to. He has such a deep team that he can go to so many different guys in different situations, allow players to rest and then come back in and have these bursts of energy to allow them to make those hustle plays, attack the offensive glass. That's exactly what they did, while Cleveland had to play 3 guys 40 plus minutes. Mobley also almost did that as well. They just don't really have the depth, and maybe that ends up biting them in the end, and the Knicks win this series because they're able to be more well rested in those final moments, make those hustle plays in those key moments to help them win. Maybe that's ultimately the downfall of this Cavaliers team, they need people to step up, especially anybody but Donovan Mitchell. Darius Garland had a fine game, but he didn't have a single shot in the fourth quarter. He had just 17 points at one dime. They need more from him if they want to win. Donovan Mitchell can't be putting up 38 points and you still lose. Mobley really struggled offensively. They need more out of him. Isaac Okoro was basically unplayable in this game. Jetty Osman was fine, but for some reason they had him guarding Jalen Brunson for the most part down the stretch, and he pretty often got cooked. I don't know. I just didn't leave this game feeling super encouraged by what I saw from Cleveland. Now, I don't think they're going to lose this series. I still am probably leading Cleveland like my initial pick was. I did pick them to win in 7. But I do think that the Knicks showed a lot of reasons why I was optimistic that this series would go pretty far, and why ultimately the Knicks can definitely take this one. Third best game of the day was Sixers versus Nets, and it's a pretty significant drop off from those first two to now this one. It was fun for the first half. Mikal Bridges was dominating. He had 23 points on 62.5% shooting, looked really comfortable as the number one option in his first playoff game. The Nets did a great job of forcing the ball out of Embiid's hands. He had just 10 points. However, they were down nearly double digits at the end of the first half because the rest of the Sixers completely balled out. Tobias Harris had 12 points with 2 threes. D'Anthony Melton knocked down a couple of triples. James Harden had 5 threes in the first half alone while racking up 6 dimes. Philly took a 9-point lead into the second half where the three-point barrage kind of continued, and the Sixers actually set a franchise record for most threes made in a playoff game. I believe the number was 21, and ultimately beat the Nets by 20 points, even though Joel Embiid didn't have a super dominant effort. Now, he did end up having a better second half than he did a first one, but he didn't have to do anything crazy. It's not like Embiid had to put up 45 points for them to win by 20. He had just all around a decent, solid game. He deferred to the rest of the guys because the Nets were sending double teams the second he touched the ball. They were refusing to let Embiid beat them. They said anybody but Joel, and everybody else did help beat them. That's kind of the strength of the Sixers team. It's one of the best ones, if not the best one, that the Sixers have ever put around Joel Embiid, because they're the best according to three-point percentage, three-point shooting team in the entire league. They have a high-level playmaker in James Harden, who his finishing is still worrying. He really did not have his burst today. He got blocked at the rim quite a bit. It looked a bit more like the Brooklyn James Harden that we saw last year before the trade over to Philly than it looked like the James Harden at the beginning of this season. Maybe the Achilles injury is bothering him a bit, but his finishing does need to be better. However, if he's hitting ridiculous numbers of threes, that helps them a good bit. But yeah, James Harden was solid all around. Tyrese Maxey was good. Tobias was good. PJ Tucker made so many hustle plays. This is just a really good Sixers team. They have the Nets completely outmatched, like I said in my playoff predictions video, and I don't think this series is going to last very long. And finally, we had Celtics versus Hawks, which I'm hardly going to touch on because it was a complete slaughter. Sure, Boston only ended up winning by 13 points in the end, but they were up 30 points at halftime and kind of just let their foot off the gas in the second half. Their defense was stifling. It was some of the best defense we've seen Boston play all season. Robert Williams was a monster. Derek White was great. Al Horford was playing some good defense too. The Wings, the Jays were locking up but also playing well offensively. Derek White offensively too was amazing. Marcus Smart was looking like the deep point guard that we saw last season. They were super engaged on both sides of the ball. Atlanta's just not very good, especially compared to the Celtics team. Trae Young shot 5 of 18. DeJounte 10 of 25. When that happens, Atlanta has no real shot. I mean, John Collins, DeAndre Hunter had solid games, same with Clint Capella. But overall, this team's just not good enough to really match up with Boston. They don't have the depth. They don't have the star power. They're outmatched completely. Boston is going to make quick work. I expect this to be a sweep, like I said in my playoff predictions video, and this game only solidified that thought. With all that being said, those are my thoughts on the first day of the NBA playoffs. I think overall it was a massive success. Warriors versus Kings is going to be a classic series. I think Knicks Cavaliers also is going to be pretty good. The other two probably won't last long, but ultimately you're typically going to see that in the first round of the NBA playoffs. Let me know what your thoughts and biggest takeaways were from the games today in the comment section below. Did any of these games change your opinion on who's going to win these series? Which one are you most excited for tomorrow as well? Please let me know. I appreciate you watching. Please leave a like and subscribe if you enjoy, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any of these videos. I'm going to be covering almost every single day of the NBA playoffs, so you don't want to miss out on that. I appreciate y'all watching. I'll see y'all later. Real one, safe back.